This is probably going to be the hardest YouTube video for me to make right now, and I thought about not making it. This past Wednesday, around 9 o'clock at night, I lost my dad. He was in the hospital for about 4 or 5 days, and he was sedated the entire time. He was in a kind of like a medically induced coma, and those were like literally the hardest 4 or 5 days of my entire life. I'm his next of kin, so I pretty much had to make all of the decisions as far as, you know, taking him off any machines, or, you know, if they resuscitate, if he has a heart attack, whether or not to use the shock pads on him. And pretty much I was just, you know, the person that had to call all the shots. But of course I told my family, I said, you know what, I'm going to make my decisions based off what everybody else thinks. So, you know, I pretty much was just going off of what people were thinking and what people thought would be best. And some people thought it was best that I disconnect the machines and let my dad go, and some people thought that it'd be better if I just let him go naturally on his own on his own time. And that was difficult in itself because, you know, you don't know when that's going to be, and you don't know if he's suffering, and you don't know, you know, whether if we leave him on these machines any longer, will his condition worsen to the point where, you know, he will be suffering at one point. And it's hard sitting in the hospital room, you know, looking at your dad, and you don't know if he can hear you. You know, you're just sitting there and you're like, this is the last time probably that I'm going to see my dad. I didn't think that the entire time I was at the hospital. The first day they just said it was, you know, a minor heart attack, and that there were a few other things wrong with him, but they still needed to figure everything out, and the doctors didn't seem alarmed at all. And then, you know, just somehow on day 3, I remember, oh my god, this was literally, I can't tell you which day was the worst day because they were all just equally terrible, but it was day 3, and I was coming home from school, and I had a night class, and I had class all day that day, and I drove about an hour from school to go visit my dad, and I thought that's just what it was. I thought I was just visiting my dad. My father's stepson was there with some other lady, and he said, Stephanie, we need to talk. And I said, okay, well, I'll be there in like an hour. Is it bad? And he's like, no, it's not bad. Just drive carefully and get here. And I'm like, okay. So I get out of the car, and they like sat me down outside of the hospital, and they pretty much, that's when they broke the news to me that my dad was having multiple organ failure, and that the doctors were doing everything they could, but they told me basically that night, they gave me that option that I should take my father off of life support and let him go. And I was like, I was like blocking everything out. I was like, I'm not listening to you guys. I'm just going to wait to talk to the doctors because I don't want to hear this from you. I want to hear this from a doctor. So I got upstairs, and I'm like shaking and crying, and I talked to the doctors, and they pretty much said the same exact thing. They said that my dad was having multiple organ failure, and they said when it involves 3 or 4 organs like my dad's, that the chance of survival is less than 1%. I don't know if you guys know or not, but my dad and I have had a very weird relationship. There were points in my childhood that my dad and I, you know, we didn't talk much because my parents were divorced, and towards the end, the past 3-4 years, or maybe even longer than that, I think the past 5 years, my dad and my mom became really good friends. My dad would come for holidays. My dad would come over the house for dinner on random weeknights, on random weekdays. He would come over all the time, and my dad would invite me out with his friends for drinks and dinner, and for, you know, we would hang out like friends. Sometimes it felt like my dad was like just my best friend, like not even like, you know, my dad. And like, I don't know. You know, sometimes my dad and I had disagreements on things. I didn't like the fact that he went out so much and that he was hanging out with all these people. I wanted him to hang out with me more. But, you know, at the same time, the phone works both ways. And I kind of, the last month, I really, you know, kind of blocked him out of my life a little bit. I was mad at him. I didn't talk to him. I remember the last time I saw him was like 2-3 weeks ago, like outside of the hospital. He came into the bar where I work and I was mad at him, and I handed him a beer and I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I kind of gave him like this dirty look, and I ignored him for the rest of the night while I was working, and I didn't say anything to him. And then I left my job in a hurry, and I left without saying goodbye. And that was the last time I saw my dad. Like, that moment in my life is forever etched into my mind. I'll always remember that time that I ignored him and I didn't say bye. And when you're laying there with him, when you're sitting in the hospital watching him, you're wondering if he knows that you loved him and that you're sorry. I just wish I could have 2 seconds with him where I could just tell him, "Dad, I love you so much. I just hope he knows it." I wanted to know that so bad. And then I'm thinking about my dad being gone, and it's the holidays, and you know, I went to the funeral home to pick out his casket and to pick out everything for his funeral, and it shouldn't be that way. I should be picking out his Christmas present. I should be going to the mall and buying him pajamas. I shouldn't be going and picking out my dad's casket. It shouldn't be like that. I'm so mad because I can't call him anymore, because I can't pick up the phone and say, "Hey Dad, what's up?" I can't. Oh my God, guys. Never, I mean, you really don't know what you have till it's gone. Every single moment you have with your mom or dad or whoever, just cherish it. Just cherish it. Oh my God, what I would give now for a simple hello text message, like anything, you know, anything. Oh. It's completely devastating to me that I can't do that anymore. It makes me want to rip my hair out. I think that the worst part of this, I mean, I've never lost a family member before. I've never lost anybody that was close to me. I've kind of just lived in like this innocent world where like death didn't exist. And when this happened, it was just like everything. It was like, you know, when you're learning to deal with death, you know, you start with like your grandparents and you kind of accept that because like they're old and because that's just like the cycle of life. But to like lose your father when you're 20 something years old, it's like, how do you even deal with that, you know? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many of you are going through the same thing that I'm going through or have gone through the same thing that I'm going through. But if you have had something like this happen to you and you have any words of advice or anything, just, you know, let me know. Alright, well, thank you for watching, guys, and I hope you all have happy and safe holidays. If you're watching this and your dad is at home with you, give him an extra big hug tonight and tell him that you love him. Always tell your mom and your dad and your brothers and your sisters and your family, tell them as much as you can that you love them, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to be the last time that you see that person, and you want them to know that they loved you. Never leave off on a bad note with somebody. Just always be kind, and always say I love you, because I've made that mistake and it's going to follow me and haunt me for a very long time, and I would do anything to go back and change that. Alright, That's it. Thank you for watching.